And if we expand the idea of what culture is, and how we can design it from just employees to everyone inside of an ecosystem that is either potential customers or advocates that don't engage, to employees, like there's no wall. There's literally, before I used to say it was like the walls of the building were kind of going away. Now there are no walls of buildings. It's just we're all here, and I happen to be creating value for you. I get paid to create value on the inside, but as a community manager, right? If you're like a Google community manager or one of these others, that's their job, is to connect with the community. Why doesn't that should be the case broadly?
What will you do to unlock innovation? In today's fast-paced world, innovation might not be enough. Tomorrow's pioneers of change will need to be agile, able to adapt, and committed like never before. Your host, Sanna Vinding, invites you to listen in and join business leaders from around the world as they share their visions for success in our future business challenges.
I want to welcome Josh Levine. He's an educator, designer, and best-selling author. Josh has helped build culture-driven brands, and as a principal of Great Mondays, he continues to work with technology and social enterprise organizations. So welcome, Josh. I'm so happy to have you here on today.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
So let's go further into company culture, right? So let's get a definition, because we want to be sure that we're all on the same page here. So how will you define company culture?
It is the cause and effect of every decision that you make, every decision that every employee makes, big and small. There's a lot of different definitions out there.
Yeah.
And when I first started looking into and thinking about company culture about 15 years ago, I felt like I didn't understand. I was like, this seems really important, but how do you call it? Like, what do you say? And there's a lot. So there's kind of some common, there's sort of the dictionary definition. So the behavior, the kind of the rituals, the kind of repeated pieces of a culture or a group of people, or maybe some people might say it's what you do when the boss isn't in the room. Right? There's that one. Yeah. So there's all sorts of, and they're not wrong, right? Yeah. Like they're not wrong, but for me, it wasn't very instructive. And so it took me a while to kind of think through this, because it was what I realized, it was cyclical, it was systematic, which is why I articulate it that way, cause and effect, because that is essentially the power and the problem or the challenge of culture. Yeah. Is that if you're not aware of how you're acting, how you're making your decisions, you could be influencing how other people are making their decisions in an unproductive way.
Yeah.
So that's the most important piece, cause and effect.
Yeah. So why is it so difficult? And I think when I started my career many, many years ago, you talked about company culture, right? The leadership did. Mm-hmm. And you still do. It's like it's still so big. It's still that mountain. Mm-hmm. So why is it so difficult?
Well, culture is I think number one, you just said it. It is a big thing. Yeah. And number two, where are the edges of this thing, right? It's a fuzzy topic. So how do I wrap my arms around it?
Yeah.
I am happy to report that people are now paying attention to it more and more.
Yeah.
And that's wonderful, because now we have more eyes and we have more people engaging in the practice. Yeah. The question is, what is the practice? And so when to answer your question, why is it so hard? Well, because I don't know what it is. Like, what is that definition? And even if you have that definition, the behaviors and choices, what do I do about that?
Yeah.
How do you influence behaviors and choices? Well, it's everything.
Yeah.
Right. So now what? What do I like? You're like, that's too much. I don't know what to do. Right. Like, I'm just going to install a foosball machine, or I don't know what it might be.
Right? Tape, right?
Yeah. And so previously, or maybe the majority still, they leaders only think about culture when it is a problem, when there is a problem that arises, and that means that they're being reactive.
Yeah.
And when you're reactive, you're on your heels, right? You are not thinking strategically, typically, if you have a crisis. And so what I like to say is that it is better to address culture early so that you don't have to address a crisis at the same time.
Yeah.
Why is culture hard? Because it's a big thing that is really ill-defined. And so what I asked myself the same question, and that's why I wrote my book, Great Mondays. I define the 6 components of culture as a starting point for people, for leaders, for managers to have something to hook into, little tools and levers and opportunities to think, okay, if I don't want to just react, I want to be proactive. How do I do that? And as a designer, a design thinker, I like to think about a framework and a pattern that allows people to understand the problem better. And that's what I've laid out in the book. And that's really the core principle of everything that we do when we work with clients as well is, what are the 6 components? How do we help you develop each of those?
Yeah. What if you go and work with a client? What are some of the signals that you see if there's a bad culture or not as good culture?
Well, I think first off is I don't want to necessarily say what is a bad or what is a good culture.
Yeah.
The question is whether it is a culture that is aligned with the goals and the outcomes that you want. So, for example, there have been many reports about the crappy culture, quote unquote, at Amazon. If you're working the warehouse, you get a 5-minute bathroom break, right? Or I don't know, whatever the latest scandal is.
Yeah.
But you can't argue with the success, right? And so it's this customer first, customer only, and employees are not the priority. Okay. So you've made a choice, but I mean, I'm not saying you're not a successful company. I don't think that's a great culture. I don't want to go work for Amazon. Yeah. But if it's aligned with what their goal is, then that's fine. And so there's the corrective that it's a kind of a false choice, right? Do we want a good culture or a bad culture, right? Like, you want to be thoughtful about your culture. Yeah. You have a culture. Every company has a culture. It's just a matter of whether it's the one that you want or not.
Yeah, but you can also write down, right? You have all your mission and your vision, right? And say how we live, by all this. And then there is employees that's not living by it. And sometimes they are allowed to behave.
Yes.
Because they perform, right? Or they're a good resource, but they don't live it. And then
the high performing asshole.
Yes. Thank you for saying it. And it really hurts the company within. Yes, it does. Yeah. And I'm so surprised sometimes that how long it can take for leadership or management to see it, that it's, yes, you are performing in this moment and maybe the next couple of weeks, but what's happening behind the scenes is just not good.
It is a classic, and I think there's many problems, business, corporate culture, or corporate enterprise, problems that can be framed in the same way that this is, which is short-term benefit, long-term problem.
Yeah.
What is the trade-off? What is organizations are often incentivized to and as humans we are in sort of intrinsically programmed to deliver on the short term, to succeed, kind of this fight or flight, we got to win this quarter. And so if one is unable to see the picture, and even if you are, to really reckon with the scale of the problem that will emerge in the future, you don't feel that pain now.
Yeah.
Right? The pain now is if we fire this person, we're going to lose our big accounts.
Yeah.
But if you don't fire this person, then in 18 months, you're going to have, a 25% turnover. Your turnover is going to continue to be, whatever it might be, or accelerate. Right. So, and it's hard, right? That's an ambiguous, you're like, what will happen? You're like, well, I don't know what problem will occur in the future, but I do know that if we get rid of this person now, we're going to see a drop or, in sales or whatever it might be.
Yeah.
So short versus long. And culture is the kind of quintessential long-term project. This is something you invest in now, and you can maybe get a couple wins, but it takes a long time. And so this is only culture. I mean, culture work is really only for organizations that want to have success in the long term. I don't want, it's like we try not to get wrapped up in the kind of build it quick and flip it organization startups, right? Like if you're like, I'm in it just to make money, like as a startup, someone who's a founder, because that they don't care about the long term inherently in that. So when we think about culture is a long-term investment. We're talking about legacy. We're talking about a decade. It takes a long time. And the bigger the organization, the longer the longer timeline it takes to actually feel that. But in the end, there's no other way to go about it. If you want to turn the ship, I know the ship is going to turn slowly.
Yeah.
But if you don't, the ship is not turning and will run aground.
Yeah. Yeah. You have to do something. So let's talk about it, right? Because after the pandemic, hybrid, not hybrid, companies going back to being in the office, some saying you can be, remote. How do you create a company culture suddenly when everybody is all over?
Yeah, that is a really good question. So the reason why this is what I believe. The reason why it's a problem when everybody's all over the place is because you're missing those relationships. You're missing. So in the way I'd like to describe it, relationships are the synapses of culture. And building it and strengthening relationships is the way an organization is coherent. This is what we do is we work with other people.
Yeah.
So here we are in this moment of somewhat, hybrid or fully distributed, and all of a sudden we don't have the same moments in time to build those relationships. We don't have the proverbial water cooler, pass them in the hallway, connect with folks, even that little nod or good morning or whatever, familiarity, right? You just see people. So now, and there's some research out that shows you're closer with your immediate team, but much further away from anybody else. And so you're going to have a very strong team culture. You're going to be familiar with folks and you're having, it's like people are available and you're doing the most immediate things. But now we have to be very, very explicit about how we build relationships beyond our immediate team. And I think the organizations that don't do that are going to see a severe drop-off in quality of collaboration and engagement and work. You're not going to have you're not going to know what's happening elsewhere in the organization. And
Yeah.
so there's this whole rebirth, right? This whole like really messy reimagining of how the organization works now. And we're going to see the pain of that. And then you're going to see leaders who go, remote work sucks. It's not going to work. It's terrible. But the truth is that it's not working because we haven't figured it out. It's not that it can't work. There are things that we need to be in person for sure.
Yeah.
But I believe that we can absolutely have an organization that really does great work and can do it remotely and can have a good culture, except that the problem now is that the burden of these relationship building activities is now on the organization. Before it just happened.
Yeah.
Before it just happened, right? That's why we had the foosball or the ping pong or the pizza parties or whatever. Like those are some of the ways that that's what I call rituals.
Yeah.
And so we pass people in the hall. It just happens. We see each other. We're in the same location. But I don't know if you ever worked at an organization that actually had multiple buildings or even multiple floors. There's some research out there that says that there's sort of this logarithmic relationship between distance of where someone sits and how well you know them.
Yeah.
And so if there's someone on a different floor, it's like you'll never see them because you don't go to that other floor.
Yeah. No.
And it doesn't matter. So what we have to do, this is kind of that, except for in the extreme, is we now have to, as part and parcel of our job as a manager, as a business unit leader, as an executive, to say, if I want my organization, my people that work for me to be able to be engaged and collaborate and work well together, they have to know each other. And so we need to establish rituals, we need to establish channels, we need to establish things that happen that actually enable people to connect with one another.
Yeah.
Outside of their normal Zoom team call. And that is going to be the key.
Yeah.
And it's not easy. And it's not, quick. But it's critical. We have to.
Yeah. Have you any examples with any of your clients or anything you read where they succeeded? Because again, some of it is virtual, right? And there is people that are not as tech savvy. So they're like, I don't want to do it, right? It's easier just to walk by and say good morning. Have you any examples you can share?
I was just reading an article by one of the writers for The Atlantic, and I drew a really important lesson. And the article was all about how sports is the perfect bonding activity, like to be a fan of a sport.
Yeah.
Exactly, because the stakes are so low.
Yeah.
And he goes on to tell the story about how he and his dad were Cubs fans. And, there was a relationship that built on that, like ultimately not life or death thing. It's just a kind of this thing to connect on. And what I realized, to me, the corporate example of that is an example of that would be like if you have a cat's channel on Slack, or a dog's channel, or a baby's channel.
Yeah.
And what that does is it creates these new, it identifies, people self-identify with things that they have in common with others that have nothing to do with their project plan.
Yeah.
And what's wonderful about cats, dogs, and babies is that when you're in there, you're like, oh, it's so cute, right? You like,
Happy.
you're not corporate, right? You you're like, your heart's open, right? Like if you're a dog person and you see dog, it's like you have a dog, you're like, oh, I get that totally. And you're able to be more open and connect with others.
Yeah.
Is this the panacea that everybody's looking for? No. But is it an easy way to create for people to identify
Yeah.
and find people that they have common interests? Absolutely. There's no reason. It costs $0 and it runs itself. People
Yeah.
want to share the cats, dogs, and baby pictures. So to me, that is the starting point. That is a very concrete, easy thing to think about of like, what are the other things that we have in common that people can find connections with others? You can also and should also create these connections around employee resource groups. That's another way to do it. That takes a lot of effort, but
Yeah.
I've seen it. One of my clients is just they're so all in on the on diversity, equity, and inclusion, but they have an incredible wealth of employee resource groups that are branded, that have names that are connected to the brand, and they each have logos, and people are really passionate about it. Beautiful. Look at the value. Look at that. That's so great. Why not have a lunch and learn over, over Zoom? I'm going to teach you how to make risotto. So everybody shows up who likes to, cook, or maybe not. Maybe they're connecting with them anyways.
Yeah.
So these are the things that we need to start doing, is establishing these kinds of corporate approved,
Yeah.
right? Like it needs to be
But activities, right? Or bonding across. Yeah.
Yeah, and it needs to be it's a range, right? So corporate supported, what I call emergent rituals, and the corporation goes, oh, right? Leaders go, oh, look at what's happening here. We're going to let this happen. Hey, did you know you guys can do this on, on company time? A CEO that I worked with, I saw her call out one of the people that we were working with and saying, "Hey, I know that you play bass guitar, and I know that you and a few of the folks here and at the company have like a little group. I want you guys to do a performance at the next employee kickoff meeting or whatever it is, the sales kickoff."
Yeah.
And then like the next time we were in the room, she was like, "You guys been practicing?" And she was like, "Wait, you were serious?" And she was like, "Yeah, I want you to do it. Like, let's get it." So that's it's like, ooh, I see the opportunity.
Yeah.
Let's make this happen.
Yeah. No, that's good. No, yeah, it is to get an interest, right, and learn more about everyone, and their interest as well. So that's a great way to do it. What about all the generations? Because I can see that with my kids. They can be virtual, right? And even they never met the person, maybe they never saw the person because they're playing games, right? But they still talk about this person as a friend. So how with generations and in the workplace now, how is that going to impact company culture?
Yeah, I mean, they're going to be more likely and more naturally able to make these and have these relationships. For us, you and I, where it's like it's a little bit harder because we had experience being in person, and that's kind of the benchmark. But Gen Z never had that, right?
Yeah.
It won't. So I believe that it's going to be more naturally. They're going to take to it more naturally, but it will still be it'll still be the organization's job to make sure that they have the opportunities to connect with other people in the organization. Because if you're on a Discord chat, you're going to be on one of the Discord servers, right? It's going to be for a particular interest that may not have to do with the organization. It could be a coding language, it could be a game, whatever it might be.
Yeah.
So, that's where they're going to spend their time and energy, and that's fine.
Yeah.
And what are the opportunities you can do to spin that up inside of your company as well, so that you have this opportunity? And the truth is that maybe at the as we continue to go down this distributed path and we have these very powerful ways of connecting with people, maybe we're going to see these rituals and connections that happen inside and outside the company.
Yeah.
Maybe what we need to do, what organizations, forward-thinking organizations need to do is they need to connect customers and employees over, you know, craft beer brewing or something, right? Like
Yeah.
to me, I think the future of culture is really about communities internally and externally. And
Yeah.
that's what these tools are doing, is creating communities where there were none. And you
Yeah.
may not even know what those people look like, but you're both, you have these
Same
avatars,
interest.
you're playing the
Yeah.
games. And so I think there's a whole realm of possibilities. And if we expand the idea of what culture is, and how we can design it from just employees
Yeah.
to everyone inside of an ecosystem that is either potential customers or advocates that don't engage, to employees, like there's no wall. There's literally, before I used to say it was like the walls of the building were kind of going away. Now there are no walls of buildings. It's just we're all here and I happen to be creating value for you. I get paid to create value on the inside, but as a community manager, right? If you're like a Google community manager or one of these others, that's their job, is to connect with the community. Why doesn't that should be the case broadly?
Yeah. So what I hear as well is there's been a lot of focus, right, when you talk to looking at your customers, right, saying customer centric, but here, right, to be employee centric. I think that's being sure that you're listening as well to your employees.
Community centric. And here's what I'll say: I think the terms employee and customer are going to become irrelevant.
Yeah.
You're no longer it doesn't matter. When you look at, and I know this is going pretty far out there, but you look at distributed autonomous organizations, DAOs, right? Like those are self-organized groups of people that get value when the organization, succeeds. I don't think that is too far afield from what a formally created traditional organization is like, where you have people contributing. I mean, you have to look to open source software. One of our clients, we had a long-term relationship with Red Hat, now part of IBM.
Yeah.
Linux and the Red Hat Enterprise Linux, that is an open source program, and there's people in this community that contribute to that unpaid, because it gives them social status and they want to be part of this project.
Yeah.
So that is, to me, that was like kind of the early days of what I expect to see, where you're going to have people, a community supporting a project, and what we get and what we contribute is not necessarily, going to be the I'm going to get a paycheck for sitting at my desk from 9 to 5.
Yeah.
That's a very old way of thinking. Now it is, I get social credits when I contribute to a project, and maybe that helps me, build my next startup. I don't know. Like, oh, I know who you are because you did these things. What is value? It's like the internet and this distributed world has allowed us to create to exchange value in ways that is so far beyond what my parents could ever even understand, right?
Yeah.
It's like you make a widget and you sell the widget and you make you make a few pennies on it. This is we're now moving into this world that doesn't adhere to that anymore.
Yeah. How do you recruit in how the world looks like today? I've seen, if you go and just looked on LinkedIn, right, and you see there's so many jobs, but if you go and look, right, if that was a dating site, I heard somebody say this, right, if that was a dating site, it looks like, oh, date me, right, and then they just write me. If that was a dating app,
Yep.
I'll run away and like saying, I'm not, that person can only talk about himself, right? I'm not there.
Mm-hmm.
So what does the future look like when you have to recruit new employees?
Well, I think first you hit it exactly, which is you need to tell them, you need to be really aware of what those people that you would like to work for you want. What do they get? And I'm not just talking about pay and benefits. What are the things? What are the things that you get when you sign up? So one of the models that we created, the 5 Ps of the employee experience, and this works. This is works for when you're recruiting a new candidate to continuing to keep people at the company. So
Yeah.
the 5 Ps: package, potential, people, purpose, and perception. So it's the hierarchy of employee needs, right? So it's like Maslow's hierarchy of needs. So at the bottom, easy to provide, easy to articulate package. What do I get today? Money, healthcare, whatever that is.
Yeah.
Fine. Everybody can. As a matter of fact, you're probably not giving them as much as Facebook can, right? You're going to compete with Facebook and Google, so theoretically. So that's just one thing, but that's not the only thing. Package, potential. What do I get tomorrow? Is there a path for leadership to get to be a leader in this company? Is it a resume builder? What do I learn? What do I get to? Well, how does this advance my career? So package, potential, people. So those are the people that you're going to work with. And I'm not just talking about, ooh, Sana's awesome. I can't wait to hang out with her and we get to do some cool things together. It's no, look at who is working here. You will become like them.
Yeah.
Right. There's the rule of like, you're the sum average of the 5 or 10 people that you hang out with most. So you would like to be, ideally, you're like aspiring to be, you're like, those people are so smart. It makes me feel like that's exactly the kind of person I want to become.
Yeah.
Okay. So that's the first 3: package, potential, people, purpose. So one of the core tenets of culture in the first place. Why am I coming? What are we doing here? It's not just about money. What is it that we're doing at this company, and how can I contribute that is about more than just money? What is it we're doing? What is our purpose? You better have that clearly articulated in 25 words or less.
Yeah.
It's one of the things that we help our clients do. And it's the first component of culture.
Yeah.
And then package, potential, people, purpose, perception. At the end of the day, what has this job, this moment in your career done? When you look back and you're like, I went and worked at XYZ, and that was the moment that I was able to do what? And how do you articulate that? That's so obscure or obtuse. Like what might that be? And I think that's part of the magic of having really great communicators on your team. How do you sketch this opportunity in a way that isn't just, you get $150,000 a year? It's like, come join us to do some amazing things. And at the end of the day, you're going to look back and say, oh my gosh, I was part of this incredible journey.
Yeah.
You articulate that with language, with design, right? Those are all the things that you start to, and as you move up this pyramid, it's harder and harder to articulate. It's harder and harder to get, but when you get there and you're able to tell this cohesive story, all of a sudden that dating profile looks a lot sexier.
Yeah.
And don't forget that you can't just stop once they've signed on, because you better believe if they're a high potential, they're getting hit on by recruiters and headhunters every week.
Yeah.
So make sure they understand what they're doing there and why.
Yeah. Yeah. Be human as well, right? And have that emotional and be proud of what the company stands for.
Absolutely. It's not going to be for everybody. You're like, well, I don't know if someone's going to like the way that you talk. That's fine. That's fine. Like, be a human, write like a human.
Yeah. What do you think, and look in the future, what do you think the future, the workplace will look like? Because we are in a mix, right? Hybrid, be in the office. Mm-hmm. And it's the whole world. It's in every stage.
Yeah, it's it's going to be the micro multinational. Every organization is going to be working asynchronously, remotely, distributed. You're going to have little outposts across the country where people might come together every once in a while. So I think you're going to see what I would call like a pulsing, where most of the time you are at a home office or some co-working space, and then sometimes you're going to meet with your local team just to kind of be in the same space, even if you're not working on the same project. So if you all happen to be in the mid-Atlantic region, if you're in Virginia, then maybe you want to come in and do that. And then I think you're going to find at least once, if not twice a year, you got to have the companies got to bring everybody together,
Yeah.
and it is expensive, but it's a lot cheaper than holding prime real estate in downtown San Francisco or New York, Manhattan. You got to bring everybody together so that they can work synchronously for a week at a time and get to actually know each other.
Yeah.
And to me, that is probably what we're going to see, is this, like, even if it's hybrid, right? So hybrid, we think of when we first started talking about hybrid work, it was like, oh, I am working sometimes at home and sometimes in the office. But what about my team? Are we doing that at the same time, or are we doing that differently?
Yeah.
Am I just going into the office so that I can sit in a room on Zoom with everybody else? Right? What a waste. That's so dumb. So we're going to pulse, probably, it's like you're starting to see either a company says distributed 100%, or they say 2 days a week, it's Tuesdays, Thursdays, or 3 days a week, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, or whatever. And so you're going to have this kind of like pattern, and which I think actually works really well for humans. If you think about the way that we are designed biologically, it's like you wake and you sleep. We have the seasons, you've got the days. So I think not asking people to come in 5 days a week is a little more humane. It's a little more organic. And so that to me is like, would I make the effort to travel to, work with people for a week if I haven't seen them for the entire year? Yeah, that's going to be worth it. Give me a reason to come in. Give me a reason to come together. So I think that's the future, is going to be a lot of this, I don't know what to call it, but pulsing of, patterns, cycles, maybe cycles of work.
Yeah. No, yeah, I agree. I think that's good. And it's good to be, I like the flexibility. I think that's just, you can be much more productive.
And human. And human.
Yeah. So that was the future. Let's look into the past. So if you have to look 20 years ago, what kind of advice will you give yourself?
I was in art school 20 years ago. I would say stay interested in lots of different things, and the job that you're training for is not the job that you'll have. It's, you don't know what the certainly I didn't, and that's what I would say is, like, you think you're going to do something, but that the thing that you're going to be doing doesn't even exist today.
Yeah.
So what you need to do is start working on the skills that they're going to carry with you. I would specifically, I would say, learn how to write sooner. That would be the specific task. I think I did not. Writing is something I lean heavily into. It's something that I find really powerful, and was not did not end up learning how to do that until later in my career. So that would be a specific one. And so more broadly, it's like, just be interested in a lot of different things and start collecting absorbing all the things that are happening and continuing to, I'm a pattern seeker, like as a designer, right? I was in design school. I look for patterns. And so that's, to me, is like, you don't know you have no idea what's going to happen, but you can start to see and look for the patterns.
Okay. I like that. So if any of the listener wants to reach out to you, how can they connect with you?
Sure. Well, they can find the book on Amazon, Great Mondays. You can also head over to greatmondays.com. I've got a lot of content on there. You can read about the book, you can learn about our agency, and then I also have a /classroom with a lot of free tools and articles. So check that out. You can also find me on LinkedIn, aka Josh Levine. Yeah, I'm always happy to chat with anybody who's interested in culture and talking about the future. And they can email me, josh@greatmondays.com.
Thank you. And I'll put that in the show notes, and also make sure that it will be on mindinnovation.com for this episode page. So nobody needs to rush to write it down.
That's right.
Great to have you on the podcast today, Josh. I think, being proactive and the whole community centric, I think that's my takeaways from today. So thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks for having me. This was a real pleasure.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Mind Innovation Podcast. New episodes are dropping bi-weekly, so make sure you're following wherever you get your podcast. You can find me on LinkedIn, search for Sanna Winding. You can also find me on YouTube, search for Mind Innovation, or go to my website, sannawinding.com or mindinnovation.com. Stay curious, keep learning.